Just getting started here, doing a installation of some hybrid billet turbos and new intercoolers, new hoses, and a Kline exhaust system. So I haven't started taking the stock components off yet, but got this up on some jack stands and just wanted to get some before shots here. This is the right side turbo, getting ready to remove it. I think first I'm going to take the exhaust system off and drop the O2 sensors, the front and rear ones down, bring the cables down, drop them attached because they're really stuck on there. I feel like wrestling with them on the car. Already cut the bolts on the back because they were rusted too bad to get off. There's a strap bolt there and another one over there. So I've got some bungee cords holding it up right now until I get the turbo undone. Once I get that off, drop the exhaust, and I'll make it easier to get this right side turbo out. I'm going to take it out by detaching it from the oil reservoir. I'm going to leave this in place so I don't have to disconnect these oil return lines. The vent line, the return line. We'll have to take the high pressure line off, but the one on the left side was easy to disconnect. These ones were somewhat corroded and hard to loosen up, so that's probably the way to take it out. So I'll just leave that oil reservoir in place like I did on the other side. If you can see it over there, you can see the oil reservoir just hanging down. And the turbo has been taken out. I just dropped the exhaust system down. You can see how I hooked up those bungee cords. Made it easier for one person to drop it. It's fairly heavy, so kind of made it easy to control coming down. But you can see how it stretched the bungee cords out right to the limit there. So I'm probably getting about 50 pounds of help out of those bungee cords, which is nice to have working underneath it. I'll disconnect that and we'll be ready to go. You can see the way this mounts on here. That's the bracket that the exhaust system mounts on. The straps run behind these pieces here on each side, so you have to take these straps, move them from the original position here, slide them over underneath this heat cover. You have to slide the whole strap over about 2 or 3 inches there, and then that comes off the ends of this, right? As soon as you do that, it's not held on here anymore, and the whole exhaust system drops. And that's what I had the bungee cords on there for, was to take the weight when those straps were pulled off. Just finished replacing the spark plugs and coils on both sides. These are easy to get to after you take the turbos out. There's a cover here on the side. It has to be removed, heat shield, and then you can get rid of those coils and the plugs. You know, it's a half-hour job replacing that. I took this cover and cleaned it up a little bit. Had a little bit of corrosion on it. Not show quality, but just hit it with the wire wheel and buffing wheel a little bit just to clean up before I put it back together. But that'll bolt right back in place. There are two bolts. Just got done porting this out. This is the exhaust inlet into the turbocharger. The original casting was kind of restrictive right here on the entry, so I took a Dremel tool to it and smoothed it out, enlarged it a little bit to smooth the transition. It's now to match up better with the new header that has a larger inside diameter. See the how the gasket fits on there, and it's a fairly smooth transition in now. Another day in the garage. Alright, the turbos, catalytic converters, and the Kline exhaust system are mounted now. Get everything fit together. I get the headers underneath mounted up, both left and right. So I'm getting ready to torque all the fasteners now. Solved this problem I had here with the catalytic converters matching up to the exhaust system. I put some oversized catalytic converters on here to get higher flow, but the flanges were two different sizes, so I ended up having to slot the catalytic converter side holes to get the flanges to line up properly. As you can see, the TiAL modified the K16 turbos on the vehicle, and stainless steel headers underneath the camera. Stainless steel headers on up to the turbo. I still have to hook up the TiAL wastegate actuators. There's the control rod there, and this control rod I have to pull out a little bit. It'll go through a coupling back to the wastegate flapper. So this opens up to allow the exhaust gases to run directly and bypass the turbo, reducing the boost. So the actuator kicks into lower boost pressure. So these TiAL actuators kick in at about twice the pressure level that the stock ones did. Check those on a bench. I was getting about a 1 bar initiation of actuation, where the stock ones were about half a bar. So that'll allow the boost pressure to build up quicker at lower RPM, and hang high through the whole RPM range. Should give me a lot of torque down low, a lot of acceleration and pull. And I'm just working on attaching these straps right now for the Kline exhaust. You can see the straps wrap around here to cover up the nice fancy nameplate on the exhaust system. I guess that's just there for show. It's all going to be buried under heat shields and the rear bumper anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Still have to decide what to do for tips on the exhaust pipes. I just put the stock ones on for now. I'll upgrade something else later. You can see the right side stainless steel exhaust header and the modified TiAL turbo, K16 turbo, and oversized cat. And we'll have to get the intercoolers, which go on the outside here. They're off the vehicle right now, and I got new O2 sensors put on the near side here. These are the ones that are used to adjust the fuel mixture. There's another O2 sensor that goes on the back of the catalytic converter, just to verify that the catalytic converter is working. I'm going to pull the old ones off the old exhaust system and put those, and those are not so critical. So I just thought we'd start with new O2 sensors on the inlet side on both sides of the vehicle, and I already replaced all the coils and spark plugs. Put in a high pressure fuel regulator, and have to put in a new fuel filter. It's part of regular maintenance here. So a bit more work to go. So I'm going to get back at it here. Just placed the heat shield on. This heat shield is the original one. Had to do some welding repairs on it. Had quite a bit of rust and corrosion from the heat cycling. But I think it'll hold up. Put some high temperature paint on it to protect it against more future corrosion. It should hold up. Put the O2 sensor in, the forward one. Still have to get the old one off the old exhaust system. Retightened the oil lines. I had to do an adjustment on the bracket here. These didn't want to line up, so I just gave up and slotted the hole in the turbo side bracket to get the bolted connection through. And now I'm going to set the wastegate actuator preload. So shifting underneath, here we have new TiAL wastegate actuator, and I'm going to put 4 turns of preload on this screw here. That's the flapper valve for the wastegate that's inside the turbo housing. And the idea there is to put enough tension on that to hold it shut under boost. My bench testing I did with the pressure gauge showed I needed 4 turns on this to have it initiate opening the flapper valve at 1 bar manifold pressure. And I'll adjust it to that, and then I'll double check it by hooking up a pressure line to the wastegate inlet valve here, or inlet there, and verify that it's the right preload. Then I'll hook up the manifold pressure line back onto the unit there. So everything else has been torqued down here. I got the headers torqued, all the exhaust catalytic converter connections at full torque. I've got the turbo clocking optimized. I loosened these all up and retightened them, let everything self-center in position. I think I got everything lined up really nice by letting the car self-align it. And I've retorqued the oil reservoir on the bottom of the turbo also. And still need to load the vehicle with oil when I get done with everything here. And when I do that, I'll replace all the seals on the drain points here in the turbo reservoirs and on the case and oil cooler connections. I have the rear O2 sensors here. I already installed the forward one on this catalytic converter. Got the one in the back here that is basically a pollution control device. I was just going to use the old ones I had. I noticed the sealing ring that was on these was all corroded and broken up, and I had to clean these up with a wire wheel and actually return the surface on the hex nut here on my lathe, and I made some copper sealing rings to take the place of the folded metal compression ring that was there, and applied a little sparingly some Loctite anti-seize lubricant on there too, and I'll install those like that, and if they don't work, then I'll probably just delete them since they're really not needed. Okay, I've got the heat shields on both sides in place. Got the O2 sensors hooked up. Got the O2 sensor wires clipped off. See, there's a couple of clips underneath here that help route these away from the high heat and protect the wiring. There's a clip on the engine for each sensor, and then another one up on the frame just before the plug point, which is up top. So now I put the heat shields over. So I got a heat shield here that goes on each side. This covers the catalytic converter and the turbocharger, and you need to have everything in place on the turbo and the catalytic converter and exhaust before applying that. So I'll put that on, then it's on to mounting the intercoolers, which go on this side of the heat shield. You can see here where I've mounted the Kline exhaust. I ended up using stainless steel bolts and fasteners, and a double nutted with a lock washer in between to keep this from coming loose. Since it's subject to loosening, it's just a strap that wraps around, and it's somewhat bendable. So that should keep it in place and resist corrosion. Seems like a lot of corrosion occurs in the exhaust area, mainly from the heat. The car is not driven in the rain, so it's not an issue of moisture, but just the heat cycling alone is enough to corrode these fasteners. That's why I use stainless steel wherever I could. That's that. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the new Wagner intercooler and the stock 996 turbo intercooler. The stock one's on the right, the Wagner unit on the left. You can see the Wagner unit here has cast end caps that are welded on to the main unit. You can see it's also thicker in the body. The stock unit has this raised lip around the edge, which makes them appear to be about the same thickness, but they're really not. So the stock one's much thinner, and the end caps are merely plastic that's crimped on. You know, so the seal could be lost or the caps could blow off, and they're just plastic end caps. You can see a lot of airflow restriction in this end cap. Here it's kind of neck down. There's not a lot of volume within the end cap itself compared to the Wagner unit, where there's a lot of cross-sectional area here for air to flow through and distribute through this end cap manifold before traveling down the bars down the middle of the unit to cool the air. So this extra thickness here is what requires you to cut the plastic ducts that the stock unit attaches to. Those plastic ducts go on these raised rails on each side. So the lip is the height of those raised ribs on each side, and that's why you have to cut that off the stock unit, which is what we did on this one. You can see along the edge here, this has been cut. Doesn't have to be super neat, but if you look at the stock one, you'll see there's a lip there all the way around and a seal. So the seal's been discarded, won't be needing that. The lip's been taken off. This will fit on there just like it did on the stock one, except now it's the same overall thickness and it'll fit in the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble that into the frame now, and I'll show you the result. I'm fitting the frame on the right side intercooler. I wanted to show you these Wagner units, for whatever reason, the spacing between the holes for the mounting bushings on each side are a little closer together than what they are in the stock units. So it's really only one part of this frame that's adjustable, and that's this tab here that you can bend. So just reformed it by bending it inward this way and then flattening it back out, essentially moving it the hole over that way. So this outside hole here will stay put, this one will come over. That'll allow these to line up enough to get the rubber bushings over these posts. So I have to insert the rubber bushings in the C-clips and push it all together. But I think the holes are close enough now for things to bend and give and get it together, and then we'll put the air ducts on it. Alright, got this bracket bent to get the bushing in there. All these rubber bushings are soaked in Armor All for a few hours to restore them to being fairly soft. So you get all these washers and C-clips back on. If you need to, you can stick a washer underneath these lugs at this end. It makes it a little easier to get back together, especially since you have to reform this bracket here to assemble things. But we got the frame all cleaned up and ready to place the ducts on it now. So the lower duct will go on next. So this part will fit in here. If I remember, I had to do some additional trimming on this on the other side. So you can see right here it's going to interfere. So I have to cut this lip back here, so I'll mark that and cut it to get it to fit. Okay, this is fully assembled now. The last adjustment I had to make was to get this seal on. So I had to cut away this unused ear. Took off about a 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch of the height of that, just so the plastic duct could move in and allow the seal lip to run continuously around this corner here and be flat. So that was one adjustment I made. I did on both sides of the vehicle. There might be another way to avoid having to do that, but that seemed to be the quickest approach. So there's the finished part. The other thing I did was applied some adhesive up here to the foam seal on top. You'll want to make sure that's bonded down in place, and that's actually lift a little bit. Put a little more adhesive on that, but you want that to stay in place until you get into the vehicle. Then there'll be compression on it, but it'll push out of place otherwise. Assembling it, so you have to stick that back down and be ready to put in the car. I have the right side intercooler assembly here. It's going to lift into the space here behind the right rear tire. 4 mounting points, 2 up there and 1 under here. So lift that up and put it in place now, and then it'll look like the left side one when it's up and mounted. Okay, I've got started attaching some of the big new hoses. Got this guy in place. It's spring lock in place. I'm installing the fuel pressure regulator. You have to get to this. It's buried in the motor. So from the rear lid here, you can see I got the light on the air pump. The air pump has to be moved. You do that by first removing the oil filter neck, and I just slid it over the side and tied it off to keep it out of the way. And then there's 2 bolts 2 bolts and 2 electrical connectors that have to be removed from the air pump, and then you can just slide the air pump off to the side underneath these hoses without removing it from the vehicle. And then you got a clear shot down there to the fuel regulator, which I've got the light on right now. There's a clip holding it in, and I put a rag underneath it to catch any extra fuel. So I just have to reach down in there and pop the clip and push in the new fuel regulator inside that housing and put the clip back on, then put the pump back in position and reconnect the electrical connectors and the oil filler neck, and not too hard. Just band the inside of these exhaust tips. Did a little polishing on the chrome, painted the inside with some black barbecue paint, masked it off with some masking tape. And it's ready to go back on the vehicle. I had to cut this one off. The screw and nut were all rusted on there, so I had to grind off with a Dremel tool the nut that's normally welded on the clamp there, and back on it goes.